So about 6 years ago, I was approached by another person because just basically I was kind of pulling my hair out. That's why I don't have any hair anymore, right? So, hello and welcome to the Retireable Podcast. I'm Mike Wallace.
My name is John Sauger.
Hello there, John. How are you doing today?
I am great, Mike. I am great. I'm having a great day, and I've been doing a little recording of podcast stuff. I see you're loaded, ready to go. We're going to have a good
No,
podcast today.
I think it's going to be great. No, a lot of what we're doing, and we're preparing for certain things, but it's just kind of nice to be able to talk about some of the things that we do on an everyday basis too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've been in this building for now, what, 16 or 17 months now here in the Detroit area. We're actually in Troy.
Yeah, but who's counting?
Who's counting? Yeah, but but there our new studio though. How long have we been in here? Maybe what, 6 months?
Yeah, it's it feels like every time we come in, Jason has made it nicer. He's added different things, added different components. So yeah, it's a gorgeous little studio. Hopefully it looks good. It sounds good. We love being in here. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of other things, and there's certain things you guys can't see on camera that we've kind of implemented as well, because we do a lot of some video recording. We'll do a lot of
like our webinars.
Yep, the webinars go through here.
Some of our bomb videos for
Exactly.
clients, live interactions with
Yeah.
clients, things like that.
And then we record our market outlook here too,
Yeah, we do.
so every quarter, so that we send it out to our individuals as well. So that's kind of nice to see as well. And it's also nice to see there's, our company is growing and expanding. So being in this area has been very nice, for the different growth of the firm as well. We have, of course, some new faces this year too that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
Yep. And including, not only, we have a few new advisors, but our customer service team, we're even, expanding in some of the team leads and some business coordinators, et cetera. So it's kind of exciting times, with what we're doing. And with us both being in this business for so long, it's just been kind of crazy. So as some of you may know, and many of you may not know, John and I are the lead advisors on wealth management team. So we do have quite a few advisors in our firm here, but most have worked independently, even some of the long-term advisors. But John and I, we've built such a core group of clients over the years, and we needed a little assistance. And so we've kind of been working through together with some teams and said, I see you basically, you only have so many hours in the day. So, how can we make sure that we're still doing the world-class service to your clients? And so we now, John and I kind of team together individually. And I have two guys on my team, Brian McLaughlin and Jacob Reeder, as well as my full-time assistant, Jackie, that's worked for me. Jackie's a wiki for over 20 years now, and who's unfortunately getting closer and closer to retirement. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do without her. She's just integral part of our team for sure. And then, so I've been doing this for about 6 years. And then the following year, you had your team then too, John, right?
Absolutely. I brought in two gentlemen, Anthony LaRock and Brian Swinney. And so with Anthony and Brian kind of starting the team, ours was a little bit of a different start. We started right during COVID. So it was, everybody had to go home from the office and work remotely. So it was a little bit of a trial and error getting stuff figured out. But yeah, it's a neat thing. I was talking with someone the other day, and he said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I actually help run a wealth management team, and I have a team of people that do these different things. And he asked a few more questions on it, and it's people love hearing that component of, yes, I have, yes, there's only so many hours in the day for me, but I have a support staff behind me, and here's all the different things we do. Or I have a team that I work with that can do different things. They have different areas of expertise as well.
That is what's cool, because as both of our teams have evolved, we find out the strengths of some of the individuals, and more importantly, with some of the overflow that you and I have, that we need individuals to do certain things. Not that we're not capable of doing it, but if we have other individuals that can do deeper dives into some of the things, or run some of the wealth management part of it, it's just added so much value to what we can bring.
Well, and simply put, it allows us to be more of where we can be a benefit and be in the right spot. There are only certain things Michael Wallace can do that you need to be doing. And a good example would be like recording this. We're recording this in a mid-morning, which means the stock market is open and moving all around. The volatility is around nowadays. It means families might be needing things, and we weren't able to do this years ago because we had to be on
Be
that point.
available. Yeah.
In the meantime, you're going to walk out of here and you're going to look at your emails and you're going to look at your messages and you're going to look at all different stuff and say, these were all things we're taking care of. These are a couple things we need from you, but we took care of all these things. And that the most important thing, yes, it makes our lives easier, but what's really, really important is the client maintains that continuation of service. And like you said, that world-class service. Really, really important.
And so I'm kind of excited as well because I was able to bring a new team member for the first time, and I know you're probably not going to be short short behind me when it comes down to your new team member as well. But we brought somebody. Her name's Katie Johnstone, and she's been working for a few weeks. But what I'm so excited about is that she's had experience in this business, and so in the training that she's done so far, she actually worked with another advisor for several years. Their company got bought out, and so now their loss is our
Is
gain
your gain.
because yeah,
Absolutely.
so they were limiting on some of the things that she could do and the opportunities moving forward. So and so she's excited, and the learning curve has been really, really quick so far, which is kind of nice because a lot of the stuff that we do can become very tedious and complicated, and to have somebody with some experience is not always possible. So that was kind
Right.
of nice to
Finding
see as
someone,
well.
and
Yeah,
someone with a good personality that fits in your group, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's hard to fit into a group of people that are already established and have someone fit in. So that's very fortunate. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so I'm
Very exciting.
excited to start that next chapter, and so I wanted to kind of discuss that with you because I know it's kind of exciting to be, again, we've been doing this you for so long, and to just to help light that fire a little bit more under you, and to see it through other people's eyes, and then to do the little things that you have to do because you have to train somebody too, to kind of sharpen your skills too. So I
Absolutely. That's
really am
awesome.
excited
That's
about
exciting. That's
that
exciting.
as well. All
That's
right.
exciting. And it's one of those components where um I know this sounds silly. You can look at it from a bunch of different ways, but what I realized with the team, and I know you're realizing this, adding another person on, is I can help more people.
Yes.
I can put people in a better position. I can be more available to help more people, and that is what it is about. That's what we do it for. If I can, you and I had this conversation many years ago, and historically, you and I have been two of the busier people at our company. There's a few other ones very fairly busy, but you and I have been two of the busier people. And I remember years ago saying to you, Mike, you have this schedule of busyness, and I now am doing the same schedule as you. How do you mentally do this? And you said, well, you either adapt and handle this, or you can't. And some people can't handle it this busy. And we were super busy. This was probably 15 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
let's say. And it was that component of, you were really busy, but it felt like, okay, I needed to do more for different people. And so the idea of the team component was so helpful to say, I can still be busy, but I can actually help more people and I can spend more time in that situation. You see it in a lot of different fields, right? That's why physician's assistants, part of the reason why physician assistant is there for a doctor, to be able to provide more providing world-class service, providing that interaction, that human touch is what we want so much of in society. So the teams help do that.
And being present,
Yes.
I think a lot of that when we were like that hamster on that wheel, you're just worried about what do I have coming up next, and so now we can just take a breath and if I need to be
List.
in a
Yep.
meeting for 2 hours or 3 hours, or to help individuals, I have the support staff behind me that nobody's knocking on my door right now,
Right.
so it's it's kind of a unique position to be in. So I'm excited, and I'm excited for you when you hit that next chapter as well. So
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
gonna be fun. All right, so today we have another unique episode. So when I say unique, oftentimes we have a subject matter, and when we have been talking, to a lot of the families that we work with, and we've gotten some feedback from some of the listeners as well. We just kind of wanted to do like more of a question and answer today. I know some of these have been from individuals, and some of this has been from just our experience with the clients. And what are some of the most common questions we get asked all the time?
Well, but in the thought process was, it made sense to bring it over to the podcast, because it was like, hey, I've been asked this question 10 times, it feels like, already this year. Then a lot of people are, how many more people are thinking it that just haven't asked it yet? And I think that's one of the things that we have to look at, is how often do we get it? So what these handful of questions are, and we can do this again in the future if we get more questions, but what these handful of questions are is stuff we're hearing all the time. And so
Yeah, and I think more importantly, a lot of it is, when we talk about a lot of the subjects that we're in general, a lot of it has to do with, the different individualized clients. So almost nothing that we do is going to be a blanket statement for everybody, right? Because everybody's in different circumstances. But there's certain questions that people ask us all the time. Simple things like when can I retire, for
Right.
example.
Do I
And
have enough money to retire?
yeah,
Am I gonna run out of money?
yeah.
Right.
So we want to address some of that stuff when it comes down to that, and then a lot of times, we our core focus when we deal with individuals usually is going to be the pre-retiree to people that are already retired.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
and we've talked about in previous episodes as well as this red zone of retirement, which is like the 10 years before retirement and 10 years after retirement. And so it's really critical to start making decisions during those periods of time and that are good decisions, because oftentimes if you make a mistake when you're 25 years old, you can recover by the time you're 55 or 60. But oftentimes if you make a mistake that's 1 year out before retirement or 3 years after retirement, that can be critical and could affect your entire lifestyle. And so we want to just kind of, again, a lot of this is going to be more general conversations, but we want to answer some of those questions as well. And so one of the questions I get oftentimes for a lot of the pre-retirees, so let's just say, use an example. Let's say we're 5 years out, okay, for retirement, and I'm preparing for retirement, and some of these questions might be even appropriate for 2 years out, 1 year out, etc. But what do I have to look at? So if I want to retire, let's just say I'm 60 and at 65, or sometimes it's 55 and I'm going to retire at 60. What do I have to look at? And so I really, one of the things that I wanted to look at, and obviously, well, if both of us answer this question, is there's kind of two things that we have to look at. Number one is um, obviously the money part of it. So when I say
Sure.
that, budget, lifestyle,
Yep.
that kind of stuff. And
Yep.
obviously, we'll deeper
I'm
dive
talking
into
that
that in a minute. But then the second thing is side of things, almost that mental side of thing, and
100% agree.
you
100%
know,
agree. Yeah.
and so I know you and I actually did a podcast about both those subjects in general at one point, but so let's dive that into a little bit. So okay, let's say John, you're running into a client that's asking you that question, that I want to retire in, let's say, 5 years. What are some of the focus that you want to look at that point?
Well, I would say it this way. I think when I'm talking with somebody in that regard, like you said, everybody's situation is different. Everybody's lifestyle is different, but that's definitely going to be part of the conversation. But just the basics that you're going to ask every single person: what's your debt situation? I mean, what do you own your house free and clear, or are we still paying on the house, or can you age in this house, or are we going to have to change? So the debt and living situation, that's gonna be a big one. The second one is going to be a little bit more on the healthcare. Where are we at on healthcare? Because that's going to be one of our bigger expenses potentially in retirement, depending on where they're at. Obviously, they pick up Medicare at 65, but if they're 55 or 58, what do we have until then, right?
We have to bridge the gap
Yep,
until that
yep,
65 till Medicare. Yep.
yep. So I'm looking at debt and the living style. I'm looking at their healthcare, and then I'm looking at what sources of income and resources do they have at this point, and what are they expecting? So kind of start, like you said, starting to look at the budget. So those are going to be questions you're going to ask every single person. Like, what is your living situation? What is our if you're going to need to make changes, if we're going to have to put money in over the next 10 years, we need to earmark that. We need to block that off, right? You can look at kind of different programs, study programs or different conversations. And like, if you just quote unquote generically say financial planning 101, like a generic, almost everything is going to say the same thing. Try and retire your debts. That's one of your focuses. And so we'll look at that at that point. And then it's going to be okay, you're going to need sources of income. So I mean, add to that. What would you think? Am I missing something on that first beginning part?
No, I think we're on the same page. The sources of income. So, again, when we first got in this business, a lot of people had pensions. They
Sure.
don't, right? And so now a lot of those questions are coming with, I have this lump sum. Is it enough?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to, I think, a lot of it when we say, put down a budget. When we look at budgets, the budgets, oftentimes we have a lot of our clients, we're not concerned about whether or not they can quote unquote retire. They will have enough money to pay the bills, quote unquote. Okay. So one of the things then is really about is lifestyle.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And so that's the only thing I'd probably add to that would be, what is the lifestyle you want to
Yes,
live?
absolutely.
I have many clients. I have a client I sat down with just this week who he hates to travel, doesn't spend a dime. He's got lots of money to do things, and he's just content being in his home and doing the things he wants to do. And then of course we have other clients. I have one client that's coming back from just recently retired, coming back from a 3 weeks out in New Zealand and in Australia.
Awesome. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so a lot of it is, and of course that's not cheap, right?
Right,
So when you deal
right,
with that
right.
stuff. So a lot of it is what's
Trying
the
to figure that out.
lifestyle that we
Sure.
want to look at. So when we look at that, with our first draft of this is okay, I want to live at a certain lifestyle at a certain age, and we have to look at it in today's dollars, right? But then also we have to look at doing inflation factors with
Right,
that stuff
right.
too, right?
Well, and I think as you look at it, the hard part is when we're going on when we're on this type of a question, when you're asked that question, there's two parts we're assuming on something. The first part we're assuming, and our part of the job is if you're asking the question, can I afford? You've already started doing some work. You're very rarely going to see that question from a 25-year-old go, hey, can I retire next year? That's what I'm saying. That's so by and large, it's somebody that's getting close. They've been already thinking about it. Or they've been seeing other people retire and they want to know how close they are. But the hard part about it is there's no exact answer. And I think that's the thing that people want to be told it's okay, right? They want to be told, hey, I can afford this, I can do this. They want to, and they want to have trust in that conversation. They're trusting us to say, yes, it's okay. Yes, you can do this. I think the difficulty there is it'd be great if I could say, well, if you had X number of dollars, you're perfect, you're good. But that's not necessarily how it works. You do have to ask those questions like you're talking about. And you have to get the understanding. If I will sometimes ask the question in this pre-retirement conversation, I will ask the question and say, well, if things didn't go well, do you how do you feel about that? What are you thinking? And you'll get some people go, I'll be perfectly fine. If I need to pick up a part-time job, I can. If I need to do, and you hear people, they're very laid back. They're well, then it's like, okay, you're probably good for retirement because you have a comfort zone. You'll hear other people that you have that conversation with, they'll go, oh my God, I don't know what I'll do. Well, then maybe we need to nail in a little bit more money. We need to get, so you have this range of personality you're trying to figure out in that regard too. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that?
No, that's exactly right. Well, and I think you're kind of hit on two different things when we were talking about some of the mental side. Is like one of the questions we always ask our clients is what is your plan in retirement? Like what does
What
the
are you gonna
perfect
do?
day look
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and so a lot of people are aspiring for that work optional lifestyle, and some people have opportunities that they may be able to work part-time, with their career,
Sure,
or have that work optional lifestyle where they're working because they want to, not because they have to, and it
sure,
takes the pressure off.
sure.
um, and then I think you mentioned something critical as well, where a lot of times what we see is if it's that lifestyle, it's not like earth shattering, like millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference might be 500 or $1,000 a month. And so they might be able to do that hobby job, for example, and they may be able to work in different things. Of course we see people that are golfers that will work at the
There's
range
a
and
range
make a
and
little extra money, and the difference oftentimes is just that extra 500 or $1,000 a month that they can go out to lunch and not have to worry about it, or spoil their grandkids, or do that
sure,
extra
take
trip
that extra
that
trip
year.
or sure, sure.
So and it's not
Well, and I
always necessary, but it's at least that's a thought that could happen, right?
well, and I think it's a component when you like and you said when you talk to people about what is your perfect day, it's a unique question. A lot of people will look at you and go, "I'm not sure."
Yeah.
And that's where then okay, the question we get asked is what do I need to be preparing over the next handful of years, right? That was the original question we were asking for. Then if you don't know what a perfect day looks like, maybe we should start talking about that and figuring out what that's going to be. What is it going to be? Because then we can now put numbers behind it. If a perfect day for you is you have to rent a Lear jet and travel around the world, well, that's a different amount of money than your perfect day is, sitting with the grandkids and enjoying making them. My dad used to make mac and cheese for the grandkids, but he made his own. He made his own. He took ramen noodles and he would put cheese with it, but he would color the ramen noodles and he'd make them green. And then he would take a hot dog and he'd slice the hot dog and and he would boil the hot dog to where it curled up to where it looked like an octopus. And so that was what my kids still talk about, that food from Papa,
Yeah.
from when they were kids. And so that was my one of my dad's favorite things was quality time with his kids or and his grandkids. And so like that was a perfect day for my dad. If he was able to make a great meal for his grandkids, that was a perfect day for him, right?
Well,
And that didn't cost as much money.
yeah. We hear about that a lot of times, especially, because families are expanding and not living locally as much as well,
Sure.
so, when a lot of these people first retire, sometimes they have, small grandchildren as well, and they get to spend the
Like
extra
go
time with
see them
them,
in different places.
and,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard in your career, John, that I didn't know how I had time to work, like, I'm so busy now in
Yep.
retirement,
Yep.
I don't have time to work, I didn't have time to work, so it's kinda neat, people organically learn, especially if you're busy to begin with, how to
Sure.
fill that time,
Sure.
and even you and I've talked about that, like, what does that look like for us, is it doing more golf, and is it volunteering? Because you and I are not people that are gonna sit down and just
And
watch
just
TV all day,
can't do it.
we're
Can't
gonna
you would hurt. You'd be
yeah.
miserable. You'd be
Yeah.
upset. So,
So I don't even, we're fortunate obviously with what we do that,
well,
we can continue as long as we really want to, theoretically.
and kind of to finish out this question, I think that one of the things to think about if we're finishing this one out,
Yeah.
it's hey, here's a couple of different ideas of things you have to look at. I think the number one thing I would say to people is talk with someone. Talk with someone
Have a
like us.
plan,
That's
you
going to
know?
help you put a plan together.
Yeah, because
That's
there's
the
the 2 things like you said, where, it basically budget, lifestyle, okay, and then, the mental side of things, but talking about it,
yep,
planning for it,
yep,
because we hear it and we see it sometimes that people spend more time planning their vacations than they do their retirement,
absolutely,
and so
absolutely,
it's about the plan,
yep.
all the time, and obviously that's something we talk about quite
Absolutely,
often, yeah.
absolutely. So let's jump into a different question. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can handle a different
Okay, so
question.
John, what's one of the things that you hear about a lot, or
So
what question that you've gotten?
it's really interesting because when you meet people the first time, the question you brought up is I think the one you hear the first time. The as you start to talk to people, you hear the backup plan, and this is where it's kind of an interesting thing. It's like they ask, "What am I missing?" And what I mean by that is people when you start talking about budget, you start talking about money, start talking about those different things, you can see where people are going, "Yes, I know that. I've been budgeting all my life. I have a house. That shows I could budget because I was able to pay for a house, or I was able, so
Yeah.
you look at those. So people get to that point. The question I get asked all the time is, "Hey, what am I not thinking of? What are the things out there that I haven't thought of?" And so you start talking with people and figuring out, well, tell me where you're at, and then you can kind of start filling in gaps. So we're unique in being a holistic financial planning company. So we have a different situation. So if somebody says to you, "What did I miss or what did I not think of?" What are some of the examples that you see?
Well, it's funny you say that because that's actually it's couples in some of the questions I get too. Because it's kind of like some people look forward and some people look back.
Yeah,
When they looks
fair,
at that,
fair.
and so some of the questions you get is what am I missing, or like one of the things that the questions I get is what is the impact that you see that a lot of people don't think about. That
Sure,
kind of stuff. So it's kind of almost it's a similar question, if not the same question.
sure,
So it's kind of interesting when you say that, and so it's funny, again, why we do the holistic planning is we do see a lot of gaps when we meet with people, and that's why a lot of people join our firm in the first
sure.
place. And so when I look at it, there's a couple different gaps that I see, and the first one I see, probably is the something we see every day, John, is just the tax impact.
Yes,
And people not realizing the tax impact by doing proper tax planning over their life expectancies, the volume of dollars that they're giving away to the government, or they're giving away to other, to other entities, maybe like a bank, for example,
sure, sure,
whatever
sure.
that may be, by not doing the proper tax planning. And so I think I can't overemphasize that enough. And again, we've had multiple podcasts just on that itself, but I think that's one of probably 2 or 3 of the things that I see that has the biggest impact.
Well, and I think the ones that when you talk with people, it's funny because um like, the estate planning is something that people are starting to hear of more.
Yeah.
They go, "Oh, yeah, I know I need to do that, or I've already done that," right? You might talk about, "Oh, you need to have a plan," and yeah, the 3 that jump out to me, taxes, like you said, really, really important. Um, beneficiaries. Often overlooked, but it's like you opened an account 30 years ago when you started doing your 401k. Are the people the same now that are in your life? Maybe you've been divorced, maybe you've had kids, maybe you've had grandkids, maybe you've had, I mean, births, deaths, marriages, divorces. I mean, the beneficiaries is one of the ones that when you sit down with families is so often misaligned.
Yeah.
Right, you see it. It was something different before, and it wasn't changed, or something that's a big one that we see. But one of the ones that's really interesting to me, it's much more prevalent now, and we can talk about this in a different episode, but it's the soft, quote unquote, soft information. You own your house. There's a deed. You also own some sort of entity online, whether it's your data, whether it's your I don't know, Facebook or your email or whatever. Where are the passwords? Where are the base? I mean, those are the things that a lot of times people, when you talk about it, when you're getting prepped for retirement, it's like, okay, hey, where is that type of stuff? Because you're not going to want to have to deal with that all the time in retirement. You're going to, like, technology is going to continue to grow, and as you're retired, you're probably not wanting to keep up with that every single day. So where is your plan for that part of it? It's interesting though, but how much technology changes, and people that say, "Hey, I was enjoying retirement. I was golfing. I was sitting by the pool. I was playing with the grandkids." Well, they're not sitting all day long looking at their technology, and that's one of the things that's changing constantly. So it's knowing what your things are there, and knowing what you need to know. Right? I mean, that's to as a way of protection, I guess I should say, in that regard. Why I
Yeah,
think it's
and
so
it and
important.
it is kind of interesting because, like, literally, we've had podcasts on every one of these subjects for, like, and we could for hours and hours and hours. So, we could get a lot deeper when we
Sure.
talk about this stuff. And so, those are really good,
Examples.
examples
Yeah.
as well. And I just wanna add one more thing too, because I think probably the other biggest impact that I see besides the taxes and obviously doing some of the things that you're discussing as well, is planning for a survivor, so oftentimes we see in while
And
when
not the show.
pardon me?
Not the
Not the
shows.
no, not the no, yeah, not the survivor or what's some of the other no, I'm just kidding. What's out there, but yeah, so when I say that is oftentimes when we have small children, we think about, okay, we're gonna get a life insurance policy, so if something happens to one of
Yep,
us,
yep, yep, yep.
my survivor is gonna be fine. But in retirement, oftentimes people I'm not saying that you need to have life insurance. That's not my point about it. But the impact that people have is the unknown, right? We don't know how long someone will live and how long the survivor is gonna live and what that impact may be. So what happens oftentimes is if something happens to one of the spouses, um, what they're automatically they usually lose an income, right? If they're on Social Security, they lose one of
Sure,
the two Social
sure,
Security,
sure.
and they're also in that higher tax bracket. And so when we do a lot of projections, oftentimes the projections show, maybe a joint life expectancy in general, but oftentimes you don't know is someone going to pass away at age 69 or all the way to 85, and the survivor has to live 5 years without them or 25 years without them. So I think having that plan, to plan for that survivorship and having that tax plan as well, because they're going to be a single taxpayer,
Yeah.
I think we see that missing oftentimes. And so it's just making sure that you're cognizant of that and giving that peace of mind of knowing, of planning for that survivor.
And I think, again, circling back to when you listen to this podcast, when you're talking about having someone that's also seen it, having that communication, having that plan, I think is really, really important. I mean, again, we're bringing up things not because we read them somewhere or because we were just sitting around and it popped into our head, because this is experiences we've had with people.
Yeah.
That this is real life experiences where we talked about, like you said, taxation. We talked about not having proper information. We talked about not having a plan for those things. I mean, there's literally, like what you just talked about, is literally we've called it the widow's tax penalty, right? It's
Yeah.
literally, we've used that term in our office. And so absolutely these are common things. So do we think we have time to get a third question in?
Sure, John.
All right.
What's your last one there?
No, no, I was gonna give it up to you. I was my honestly, my last question is a little bit more of a kind of a, it was more, I was writing this down and I couldn't come up with a way to ask it without it being inappropriate for compliance. And it was like, you see a lot of families, I will try this. You
Okay.
you see a lot of families, again, people made money in their lives, right? So they got to a point of retirement, not because of what we did, but because they took the time and they put money in, they put effort in. But what they don't understand a lot of times is that when the market was down, they were putting money in regularly. They didn't pay attention, and that actually worked for them. And when they were, so it wasn't necessarily that they were quote unquote investors, it was that they were savers, right? And so now you get to a spot where you hear from people that say, no, I can do this on my own. I just need you to help me do X or Y or Z. And those people that say they can do it on their own, they still want to be retired. They still don't want to do it all the time. And so I get questions from people a lot of times that have said, what book or theory or idea or plan or what route should I go? And that is a question I'm getting a lot from people. And the hard part there is, like I said, it's very hard from a compliance standpoint because we can't say to you, well, you should invest this way, you should invest this way, you should invest this way. But I couldn't think of a way to try and answer that question. But honestly, Mike, I've seen that question. We do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of seminars, webinars, libraries. You see every single time you speak, you see at least one person will come up to you and ask that question.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to is what type of information are people looking for, and we've again over the years, it's just been proven that information and education helps make better decisions. I don't
Sure.
care in all walks of life, whatever that may be. If you're educated and informed, you're usually going to make better decisions. But then just by winging it,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
then unfortunately nowadays it's in this information age and this technology age, this information can be very, very overwhelming and also too big of a task for individuals,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so what happens now is that's why you and I have a job, right? Because you have to rely on some of those experts. But even you and I, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney. So we even rely on other individuals to get that information. So to have that team to answer some of those questions can be really helpful.
Well, and I think 100% agree with you. And I think that's the difficulty of this job of trying to, what do they call it? The elevator pitch or
Yeah.
trying to summarize it in a quick amount of time. I'm thinking about that. And I kind of, when I get that question from people, I kind of look at it exactly the way you're thinking. No, you need a team. But it's also what sticks in my head is the fact of things are constantly changing. And so, even a guy like Warren Buffett, who's probably, one of the greatest investors the world's ever seen, will tell you there's things he missed out on. There's things he didn't see coming. There's things he made mistakes on, but he's constantly learning and growing and developing, right? And I think that's the thing that people are looking in when they're asking that question. I kind of say to people, well, what is your plan? Well, I just want to be able to put this and set it and forget it. That's not how you can set it and forget it
It
with an
used to be that
advisor.
way. We can't do that any
No,
longer.
but you
Yeah.
can set it and forget it with an advisor like you, Mike. They can come to you and say, Mike, I'm trusting you, and you just tell me what I got to do, and that can be a set it and forget it because you're monitoring it, right? You have a team that we already talked about monitor, but a person can't just necessarily go, hey, I'm clicking these couple of buttons, and I don't have to think about it ever again. I mean, that's not how it is anymore, and you that might be able to work, but I don't know
Things have
how good that
changed.
process is going to
Yeah,
be.
things have changed so dramatically. We see all the time, when we do our analysis with a lot of these portfolios that people, a lot of the decisions they made them 10 years ago, 15
Sure.
years ago, 20 years ago were great decisions when they made them. But are they good decisions today? And so oftentimes people, just like anything else, we have to make new decisions. And
Yeah.
if we're not making new decisions, oftentimes we're making bad decisions or we're making a decision to do nothing, right?
Or the decision is being made for us,
Yeah.
being forced on us. Yeah, I mean that I think is just a fantastic line as far as, hey, this is we can't do it necessarily that way anymore. And again, there's 100 different ways you could look at examples, but I'm not trying to make people feel bad or make people feel upset. But it's like, well, this book was written 15 years ago, and I think it's a great book on investing. Probably was 15 years ago, but it is different now, right? It is, the market is changing and evolving. And yes, there's certain principles. We want to buy low and sell high, right? That's a principle that that's not going to change. But how does that impact? How does that work on stuff? That's, you can't just necessarily set it and say, well, I need 3% of this and 5% of this and 6% of this. And I don't have to think about it again.
Well, and again, a lot of it is just depending on the individuals themselves, because even the people that those questions you get. There's some people that like to pilot the plane themselves,
Sure.
and they want to do it themselves. They pilot the plane themselves, and sometimes they're gonna fly high, and sometimes they're gonna crash into the side of a mountain. But they're comfortable with that, right?
Exactly. But that's, I think, that's a great point, is that's part of the questioning. When
Yeah.
someone asks me that question, as far as, well, if I just do it this way, what's a good way? Well, if you lose, X number of dollars, how are you going to feel? And how they respond to that will kind of tell you. I did have one gentleman, a husband and wife, and I asked him, I said, well, if the market drops 20%, how much do you stand to lose? And he said, well, do I have to tell you the exact number? I go, just give me a ballpark number, man. I don't care. Like, but how much would you lose if the market went 20%? And he kind of looked and kind of gave me the number, and it was a pretty sizable number. And his wife's eyes got big because she hadn't been thinking that way. And I said, okay, you're going to lose that at some point. What's going to be your response? And his response, without missing a beat, he said to me, he goes, I'm never losing that. I would never lose that. I said, well, what are you doing differently than everybody else in the world? He said, well, no, I'm going to look at it closer and I'm going to be smarter than other people. And I said to him, sir, I obviously we're not going to be able to, I
Yeah.
said, and I wasn't mean about it, but I was like, you could kind of see his wife was kind of looking at it. And I was like, and I was blunt. I said, you asked me the question. You want an honest answer, correct? He said, I want an honest answer. I said, I'm going to give you an honest answer. I said, that's not going to work for you. I said, I like, unless you're a smarter person than anybody that's ever walked the face of the earth, or have a crystal ball. I said, but if you do intend to go that way, and I turned to his wife and I said, please call me when he passes away and you need help. And I know that's joking, but that's reality. It's
Yeah, and again, that's
not out there anymore.
there are do-it-yourselfers in all walks of life, and that's fine. But I think when we are dealing with individuals, it's really kind of when you ask the questions, I identify some clients, and some clients want a co-pilot. Okay,
Sure.
so what I mean by that is we're working more as a team, as a co-pilot, but there are other people that want to sit in the back, and sometimes
Yeah.
in first class,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
they
Just
they
depending
want
on
us
it.
to pilot the
Yes.
plane,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
so I don't. There's nothing wrong with that, and so I do like the fact that obviously we're just using those examples, but the fact is, when we're getting those questions that we're getting, and when we're dealing with that, and relying on other individuals for some of that information, is that knowing that you have, whether it's a sounding board, whether you have that co-pilot, or whether you have someone that I want to retire and I want to travel, and I don't want to even think about it, because I'm across the world
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
the market's
Yep.
going crazy.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of everything, but it's just making sure that you have confidence in that plan regardless.
So let's we got 3 questions in. We can come back to this at a different episode. So let's stop there. Let's do our holistic happening. So our holistic financial planning conversation is that we will generally not just talk about finances with a family. We might have to have a conversation with people that are licensed, of course, but about taxation, like you said, or estate planning, or finance, or insurance planning, or any of those different conversations. And so we run into this all the time. And so we always try and go back and forth of an example. So last episode, I think I gave the example. So I think it is you. So Mike, did you have anything that you saw here recently that you want to share?
It is kind of interesting because as we were prepping and we were talking earlier in this week, and John and I just have conversations about it's just about general clients and general things as well. But one of the things that we had just kind of discussed in one of our in passing earlier this week was the importance of having an income plan, and making sure that you have that income plan in place. And there's two parts to that. Number one is um, whether sometimes it's an existing client, sometimes it's a prospect that's, we talked about earlier, can I retire? And of course there's some wonderful software. There's a lot of things we can input. But it's understanding what that income looks like. Okay. And so when I say there's two parts in it, is if you want to live in a certain lifestyle, I have certain sources of income coming in, Social Security, I may have a pension, but I want to live at, I have $3,000 a month coming in. I want to live at $7,000 a month. How long is my money going to last,
Sure,
with an
sure.
inflation factor? So one of the things that we pride ourselves in it is not only having that income plan, but also having that like written income plan. And you may have also heard us using the planning approach with holistic planning, using that bucket planning approach as well, that now, soon, and later buckets. One of the things we run into sometimes too is, where we when people need strategic lump sums.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
And so some people are really good about that and they know and they plan for it, or they'll use it through their monthly income. But every once in a while we get these questions. And again, we're not talking about emergencies. Well, sometimes we are, right? Because most people
could
should
be.
have an
It could be.
emergency
It
plan
could
in
be.
there,
Sure, could be.
but sometimes, people if they're asking for it or they say, okay, I need it, but then I need it like in 3 days or five
Yeah,
days,
yeah, yes, 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 yes.
so sometimes we're making
You don't have the time to
decisions.
plan on that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we might be making decisions based on the timing of it. Where's the easiest place to grab it from instead of what's the best place, for them
To
to
get
take
it,
it from,
yes.
So I think that's important as well is it's just that planning piece and having that plan in place. So, yes, if I need a roof 3 months from now, that I'm not asking for it 1 week, before I need this money because we have it. We have a plan. We have that in place,
Get access to
but
it,
it's just a matter
absolutely.
then of strategically looking at it and utilizing that. So I just kind of wanted to just kind of pair those together because I thought that was an
I think it's
important
really
point
good, yeah,
that we talked about
yeah.
is not only the budgeting aspect of it, but understanding that if you have a written income plan. Okay, so if people are listening right now, they're listening that are retired or close to retirement. Do you have a written income plan? Okay, do you have a tax plan?
Yeah,
Make sure that you have some of those things in place, because that'll also give you confidence in that retirement as well.
100%, and allow you to weather the storms and be less emotional and make poor decisions at times, so well, so if they don't have a written plan,
Of
if they need
course,
to, how do they get a hold of
they can
us?
contact us.
Sure,
Go to our
sure.
website, fsa1.com. Of course, they can call us directly, 1-800-977-9292. Our website has lots of resources to
Absolutely, it's
look
a
at
great,
the
great
retirement
program.
quiz. They can go to different webinars or
Seminars,
in-person
come get a meal, yep,
seminars, get a meal on us as well. They can actually book an appointment directly with one of us if they'd like to,
absolutely.
because Mike Wallace is way better than John Sauger. No, I'm
Is
just
that gonna
kidding.
pass
Yeah, I
compliance?
don't
Because I
think
don't
so,
know that
but
that's gonna pass
anyways,
compliance.
I'm
I
kidding.
think it has to go the other
No,
way. I think they're gonna say
either one of us is gonna be fine, but just put Mike Wallace on there. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, um, you can get a hold of us any way that you want, and obviously, there's a lot of educational material on there as well.
absolutely. So, I wanna just r re-emphasize this point,
Call
that
John Sauger.
I want to reemphasize this point though that with all this conversation, it's so much of it is the reach out and start that line of communication. I think that's really, really
Yeah,
important.
and
It's
again, if you're happy with your advisor, that's perfectly fine, but you have to have that communication and have some professional advice can help you, immensely.
absolutely.
All right, thank you. I'm Mike Wallace with the Retireable Podcast.
My name's John Sauger. Have a great day.
Investment advisory products and services are made available through FSA Advisors, FSAA, a registered investment advisor. Annuity and insurance products are offered through Financial Services of America, Financial Services of America, FSA Health Insurance Agency, doing business as FSA Insurance Agency, FSA Tax and Accounting, and FSA Advisors are commonly owned and operated by FSA Marketing Incorporated. FSAM. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. The insurance products offered by Financial Services of America FSA are not subject to investment advisory requirements. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. FSA. A is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Chartered Retirement Planning. Counselor and CRPC are trademarks or registered service marks of the College for Financial Planning in the United States and/or other countries. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by FSAA.